My wife left me when her ex made him believe she was pregnant with his child, so I left her. But 8 years later she came back so her son could meet me. I remember the day it all began to fall apart like it was yesterday. My wife Jessica and I had been married for 5 years. We had a cozy little home, a dog named Max, and a life that, from the outside, seemed perfect. We were that couple people envied, happy, in love, and planning for the future. It was a crisp autumn morning when Jessica received the message that would change everything. Her phone buzzed incessantly as we sat at the kitchen table, sipping our morning coffee. She glanced at the screen and her face paled. "Who is it?" I asked, my curiosity piqued by her reaction. It's from Mark," she stammered, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and fear. Mark? That name sent a chill down my spine. He was Jessica's ex-boyfriend, a relic from her past I had hoped we'd left behind for good. They had dated for a few years in college, but their relationship had ended on a sour note long before I met her. Or so I thought. "What does he want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He says he needs to talk to me. It's urgent," she replied, her fingers trembling as she set the phone down. A knot formed in my stomach. Jessica had always been open about her past, and I knew Mark had been a significant part of her life. But he was supposed to be history, an old chapter closed and forgotten. The urgency in his message unsettled me. "Are you going to meet him?" I asked, trying to mask my apprehension. "I don't know. I mean, it must be something important if he's reaching out after all these years," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I nodded, though every fiber of my being screamed at me to tell her not to go. But I didn't want to be that husband, the controlling, insecure one, so I swallowed my pride and said, "Just let me know what he says." Jessica met Mark that evening at a coffee shop downtown. I stayed home trying to distract myself with a book, but my mind kept drifting back to them. When she returned, her face was etched with worry. She sat down on the couch, took a deep breath, and looked at me with eyes that held 1,000 unsaid words. "What did he say?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. He told me he thinks I might be pregnant with his child," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What? How? How is that even possible?" Jessica explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. Apparently, right before we got married, she and Mark had met one last time to get closure. One thing led to another, and they ended up spending the night together. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness, she said. But now Mark was back, claiming that he had done the math and the timing added up. He insisted the child she was carrying was his. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I had never imagined Jessica would betray me like this. I trusted her completely, believed in the sanctity of our relationship. Now I didn't know what to think. "So, are you pregnant?" I asked, my voice cracking. She shook her head. "I don't know, I need to take a test." The next few days were a blur of anxiety and confusion. Jessica took the test and it came back positive. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. We had been trying for a baby, dreaming of starting a family. Now that dream was tainted by the possibility that the child might not be mine. Jessica was devastated. She cried, apologized, and begged for my forgiveness. But I was numb, unable to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I loved her, but the betrayal cut deep. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. As the weeks passed, the tension between us grew. Jessica tried to assure me that she loved me, that she wanted to make things work. But the shadow of doubt lingered, gnawing at our relationship like a persistent, insidious disease. Then one day, Mark dropped another bombshell. He wanted a paternity test. He demanded to know if the child was his. Jessica agreed, hoping to put the matter to rest once and for all. But the damage was done. The trust between us had been shattered, and no test could fix that. The results came back inconclusive, leaving us in a limbo of uncertainty. Mark continued to meddle, inserting himself into our lives at every turn. The stress and strain became unbearable. Our once happy home was now a battleground of accusations, guilt, and regret. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bags and left, unable to bear the weight of Jessica's betrayal and the constant presence of Mark. It was the hardest decision I had ever made, but I needed to find a way to heal, to rebuild my shattered life. As I walked out the door, I looked back one last time at the woman I had once thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. Her tear-streaked face was a haunting reminder of what we had lost. And with a heavy heart, I closed the door on that chapter of my life, not knowing if I would ever be able to open it again. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Little did I know, 8 years later, Jessica would walk back into my life, bringing with her a son who wanted to meet me. Leaving Jessica was the hardest thing I had ever done. I spent those first few weeks in a daze, crashing on a friend's couch and trying to make sense of my emotions. It felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my wife, and my future had crumbled in an instant. I couldn't shake the image of Jessica's tear-streaked face as I walked out the door. Her cries echoed in my mind, but I forced myself to keep walking, convinced that distance was the only thing that could heal the wounds. I threw myself into my work, hoping that the long hours and endless tasks would distract me from the pain. My colleagues noticed the change in me, but they didn't pry. They gave me space, perhaps sensing that I was teetering on the edge. I appreciated their silence, even though it left me feeling more isolated than ever. One evening, about a month after I left, I received a message from Jessica. My heart raced as I read it, a mixture of dread and longing filling me. She wanted to meet, to talk things over. Despite my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small cafe we used to frequent, a place filled with happier memories. Jessica looked pale and tired, her eyes red from crying. We sat down, and for a few moments neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken words and unresolved pain. "I miss you," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I miss us." "I miss you too," I admitted, my voice trembling. "But I don't know how to move past this, Jessica. I don't know if I can." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was weak and stupid, and now we're both paying the price." I wanted to comfort her, to reach out and hold her, but something held me back. The betrayal was still too fresh, the wound too raw. Instead, I asked the question that had been haunting me. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes widened, and she shook her head vigorously. "No, absolutely not. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I love you, and only you. I always have." Her words were sincere, but the doubt lingered. Could I trust her again? Could I ever forget the image of her with another man, the uncertainty of the child's paternity? We talked for hours that night, hashing out our feelings and fears. By the end of it, we were both exhausted, emotionally drained. We agreed to take some time apart to think things over, to figure out if our love was strong enough to survive this. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Jessica and I remained in contact, but our conversations were stilted, filled with awkward pauses and unspoken tension. I tried to move on, to find a semblance of normalcy, but my heart was still tethered to her, no matter how much I tried to deny it. Then, one day, out of the blue, Mark showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant informed me he was there. My stomach churned at the thought of seeing him again, but I couldn't avoid it. I excused myself and walked to the reception area, my heart pounding in my chest. Mark stood there, looking as smug and confident as ever. He greeted me with a nod, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. "Can we talk?" he asked, his tone almost cordial. I nodded, though every instinct screamed at me to tell him to leave. We walked to a nearby park, the tension between us palpable. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice laced with anger. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I know you hate me, and I don't blame you, but I needed to clear the air." "Clear the air?" I scoffed. You ruined my marriage, Mark. What could you possibly say to make that better?" He looked genuinely remorseful for a moment. "I didn't mean for things to get this out of hand. I was angry and jealous. Jessica and I had a lot of history, and seeing her move on with you, it hurt. I wanted to hurt her back, and you got caught in the crossfire." I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. "So this was all some twisted revenge scheme?" "No, it wasn't like that," he insisted. "I thought she was carrying my child. I genuinely believed that. But I realize now that I went about everything the wrong way." "Too little, too late," I muttered, turning to walk away. "Wait," he called out, his voice urgent. "There's something else you need to know." I turned back, glaring at him. "What?" "Jessica took another paternity test, a more accurate one," he said. "The child has yours. I was wrong." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My mind raced with the implications of what he had just said. "Why should I believe you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He pulled out an envelope from his jacket and handed it to me. "These are the results. I thought you should have them." I took the envelope, my hands shaking. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I stared at Mark, searching for any sign of deceit. "I know I've done a lot of damage," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I thought you deserved to know the truth." I watched him walk away, my mind reeling. The envelope felt like a ticking time bomb in my hands. Part of me didn't want to open it, didn't want to face the possibility that everything could have been different if only we'd known the truth sooner. But I had to know. I walked back to my office, closed the door, and opened the envelope. The results were clear. The child was mine. The realization hit me like a tidal wave, washing over me with a mixture of relief and sorrow. All those months of doubt, of pain and uncertainty had been for nothing. Jessica had been telling the truth all along. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the paper in front of me. My mind raced with the possibilities. Could I go back? Could I rebuild what we had lost? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was certain. I needed to talk to Jessica. I called her that evening, my heart pounding as the phone rang. She answered on the second ring, her voice tentative. "Hello? It's me," I said, my voice shaky. "We need to talk." The pause on the other end of the line was heavy with anticipation. "Okay," she said softly. "When and where?" "We agreed to meet at the park where I had spoken with Mark earlier." As I walked there, my mind buzzed with a whirlwind of emotions. Hope, fear, regret. They all mingled together, making it hard to think clearly. When I arrived, Jessica was already there, sitting on a bench with her hands clasped in her lap. She looked up as I approached, her eyes wide with anxiety. "Hey," I said, sitting down beside her. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment we sat in silence, neither of us knowing how to start. "Mark came to see me," I finally said. Her eyes widened in surprise. "He did? Why?" "He brought me this," I said, handing her the envelope. She took it, her hands trembling as she opened it and read the contents. Tears filled her eyes as she looked back at me. "So it's true. He's really yours." I nodded, my heart aching at the sight of her pain. "I'm sorry, Jessica. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, I understand why you doubted me. I messed up and I hurt you. But I've missed you so much and I never stopped loving you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I never stopped loving you either. But I don't know if we can fix this, if we can ever go back to what we had." "I know," she whispered. "But maybe we can try. For our son." Our son. The words felt strange and wonderful at the same time. I looked into Jessica's eyes and saw the same mixture of hope and fear that I felt. It wouldn't be easy, but maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to heal. As we sat there, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. It was a long road ahead, but I was willing to take the first step, one day at a time. That night marked the beginning of our tentative reconciliation. We both knew it wouldn't be easy. Trust once shattered is hard to rebuild, and our relationship had been battered by months of doubt, anger, and betrayal. Still, the knowledge that our son Nathan was mine gave us a fragile thread of hope to hold on to. We decided to start by spending more time together, gradually reintroducing ourselves into each other's lives. We would meet up for coffee, go for walks in the park, and talk about Nathan and his favorite activities. Each meeting was an emotional roller coaster, a mix of nostalgia, pain, and tentative joy. One weekend, Jessica invited me over to her place to spend time with Nathan. I hadn't seen him since the turmoil began, and I was anxious, yet excited. When I arrived, Nathan was playing in the living room, his toys scattered around him. He looked up as I entered, his big brown eyes, my eyes widening with curiosity. "Hey there, buddy," I said, kneeling down to his level. "Do you remember me?" He nodded, a shy smile spreading across his face. "Your daddy's friend," he said, his voice filled with innocent certainty. Jessica and I exchanged a glance, both of us feeling the weight of his words. "That's right," I replied, my voice choked with emotion. "Can I play with you?" Nathan's face lit up, and he eagerly handed me one of his toys. We spent the afternoon playing and laughing, a semblance of normalcy returning to our fractured lives. Watching him, I felt a surge of love and protectiveness. This was my son, and I was determined to be there for him no matter what. As the weeks passed, Jessica and I continued to rebuild our relationship brick by brick. We attended counseling sessions, delving into the issues that had torn us apart. It was painful, confronting the mistakes and miscommunications that had led us to this point. But it was also cathartic, allowing us to release the pent-up emotions and start healing. Despite our progress, there were moments when the past would rear its ugly head, casting a shadow over our newfound hope. One evening, as we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her face paled. "It's Mark," she said, her voice trembling. I felt a surge of anger and frustration. "What does he want now?" She hesitated, then opened the message. "He wants to meet. He says he has something important to tell me." I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "Are you going to go?" Jessica looked at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I think I should. We need to put this behind us once and for all." I nodded, though every instinct screamed at me to tell her not to go. "Just be careful." The next evening, Jessica met Mark at a small cafe. I stayed home with Nathan, trying to distract myself with his endless stream of questions and activities, but my mind kept drifting back to Jessica and Mark, wondering what they were talking about. When she returned, her face was etched with a mixture of anger and relief. She sat down on the couch, took a deep breath, and looked at me with determined eyes. "What happened?" I asked, my heart pounding. "He wanted to apologize," she said, her voice steady. "He said he realized how much damage he caused and wanted to make amends. He's moving away, starting a new job in another city." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "So he's finally out of our lives?" She nodded. "Yes, he promised to stay away and let us move on." It was the closure we had been waiting for. With Mark out of the picture, we could focus on rebuilding our lives and our family. But the road ahead was still fraught with challenges. One evening, as we were putting Nathan to bed, he looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Daddy, are you going to stay here forever?" His question hit me like a punch to the gut. I glanced at Jessica, who gave me a small, encouraging nod. "Yes, buddy. I'm here to stay," I said, my voice filled with determination. Nathan smiled and hugged me tightly. In that moment, I felt a surge of love and resolve. I would do whatever it took to make things right, to be the father and husband they deserved. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and just when we thought we had weathered the storm, another twist came our way. Jessica started feeling unwell, complaining of fatigue and nausea. At first, we thought it was just the stress catching up with her. But when the symptoms persisted, she decided to see a doctor. The news was unexpected. She was pregnant. The revelation was both a blessing and a challenge. We were thrilled at the prospect of welcoming a new life into our family, but it also brought back memories of the turmoil we had faced. "Are you okay?" I asked Jessica as we sat in the doctor's office holding hands. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of joy and fear. "Yes, I'm happy but also scared. What if—" "Hey!" I interrupted, squeezing her hand. "We've been through so much already. We can handle this together." She smiled, a tear rolling down her cheek. "I love you." "I love you too," I replied, my heart swelling with emotion. We left the doctor's office with a renewed sense of purpose. This new baby was a chance for us to start fresh, to build the family we had always dreamed of. But it also meant facing new challenges and uncertainties. As the months passed, we prepared for the arrival of our second child. Nathan was excited about becoming a big brother, and his enthusiasm was contagious. We decorated the nursery, bought baby clothes, and attended prenatal classes together. Each step brought us closer, strengthening the bond that had been so fragile. One evening, as we were sitting in the nursery, Jessica turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think we'll ever be truly happy again?" she asked, her voice filled with vulnerability. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. "I think happiness is something we have to work for every day. It's not about forgetting the past, but about building a future together." She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. "I want that future, with you." "And I want it with you," I replied, kissing the top of her head. The arrival of our baby girl Emma was a joyous occasion. She was perfect in every way, and holding her in my arms filled me with a sense of awe and gratitude. We were a family, finally complete. But even as we celebrated this new chapter, the shadows of the past still lingered. Trust, once shattered, is not easily rebuilt. There were moments of doubt, of insecurity when old wounds would resurface. But we faced them together, determined to move forward. One night, after putting the kids to bed, Jessica and I sat on the porch watching the stars. The silence between us was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. "I've been thinking," Jessica said softly. "Maybe we should move, start fresh somewhere new." I looked at her, considering her words. It was a daunting idea, but also filled with possibilities. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere, as long as we're together," she replied, her eyes shining with hope. I smiled, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. Together sounds perfect. As we sat there, hand in hand, I felt a glimmer of hope for our future. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be challenges along the way. But we had each other, and that was enough. Our journey was far from over, but I knew one thing for certain. As long as we faced it together, we could overcome anything. The road ahead was filled with uncertainties, but also with the promise of a new beginning, a chance to build a life filled with love, trust, and happiness. Life moved forward in our new town, the routines settling in like clockwork. We were happy, or at least happier than we had been in a long time. Nathan was thriving in his new school, making friends and excelling in his classes. Emma was growing fast, her laughter a constant reminder of the joy we had found again. Jessica and I were reconnecting, rediscovering the love that had brought us together in the first place. It was a Saturday morning when the unexpected reunion began. I was in the backyard attempting to build a tree house for Nathan, while Jessica was inside with Emma. The weather was perfect, a clear sky and a gentle breeze. I was just about to hammer in a nail when I heard the doorbell ring. Jessica answered it, and I heard the murmur of voices. Curiosity piqued. I put down my tools and headed towards the house. As I walked in, I saw Jessica standing in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. Standing in front of her was a woman I didn't recognize and a young boy who looked oddly familiar. "Jessica?" I asked, my voice filled with concern. Who is it?" She turned to me, her expression a mixture of surprise and confusion. "This is Lisa," she said slowly, "and this is her son, Sam." The name didn't ring a bell, but there was something about the boy that tugged at my memory. He looked to be about Nathan's age, with dark hair and bright eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. "Hello," I said, trying to sound welcoming despite the strange circumstances. "What brings you here?" Lisa stepped forward, her eyes filled with a determination that belied her nervous demeanor. "I'm sorry to show up like this," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "but there's something important we need to discuss." Jessica and I exchanged a glance, both of us sensing that whatever Lisa had to say would be significant. "Come in," Jessica said, stepping aside to let them in. "Let's talk." We settled in the living room, the air thick with anticipation. Nathan, sensing the tension, took Emma to play in another room. As soon as they were out of earshot, Lisa turned to Jessica and me, her expression serious. "I know this is going to sound unbelievable," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it, "but Sam is your son." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Jessica's face went white and I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. "What?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Lisa took a deep breath. 8 years ago, I had a relationship with Mark. He was charming, and I fell for him quickly. But as time went on, I realized he wasn't the man I thought he was. When I found out I was pregnant, he disappeared. I tried to find him, but it was like he had vanished into thin air. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "But how? How does that involve us?" Lisa glanced at Sam, who was quietly playing with a toy. "A few months ago, I found out some information about Mark. I learned about his connection to you and your family. I did some digging and discovered that Sam was conceived around the same time as your son, Nathan. When I saw pictures of Nathan, I realized the resemblance was uncanny. I believe Mark fathered both Sam and Nathan." The room was silent as we absorbed Lisa's revelation. It was a lot to take in, and the implications were staggering. Jessica's face was a mask of shock and confusion, while I struggled to process the idea that this boy could be my son. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I asked, my voice strained. Lisa looked down, her eyes filled with regret. "I didn't know how to. I was scared, and I didn't want to disrupt your lives. But Sam deserves to know the truth about his father, and you deserve to know about him." Jessica reached out, taking my hand. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling. I looked at Sam, who was now looking up at us with wide, curious eyes. "We get a paternity test," I said firmly. "We need to know the truth." Lisa nodded, her expression relieved. "I agree. I just want what's best for Sam." The next few days were a blur of appointments and emotions. We arranged for a paternity test, and the waiting was agonizing. Jessica and I tried to keep things as normal as possible for Nathan and Emma, but the tension was palpable. Finally, the day of the results arrived. Jessica and I sat in the doctor's office, our hands tightly clasped together. Lisa was there too, her face a mask of anxiety. The doctor entered, holding the envelope that contained the answers we had been waiting for. He sat down, looking at us with a calm, reassuring expression. "I have the results," he said, opening the envelope. "The test confirms that Sam is indeed Mark's son. There is no genetic connection to you." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by a surge of compassion for Lisa and Sam. Jessica squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with empathy. "Thank you," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "I just needed to know." We left the doctor's office, the weight of the truth settling over us. Jessica and I took a moment to process everything before turning to Lisa. "Lisa," Jessica said gently, "we may not be Sam's biological parents, but that doesn't mean we can't be part of his life. If you need support, we're here for you." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded gratefully. "Thank you. That means a lot." Over the next few weeks, we spent more time with Lisa and Sam, getting to know them and finding ways to support them. Nathan and Sam became fast friends, and it was heartwarming to see them bond. Our family had grown in an unexpected way, and though it was not what we had anticipated, it felt right. One evening, as Jessica and I were putting Nathan and Emma to bed, Nathan looked up at us with a thoughtful expression. "Daddy, is Sam like my brother?" I smiled, ruffling his hair. "In a way, yes. He's a part of our family now." Nathan nodded, satisfied with the answer. As we closed the door to their room, Jessica leaned her head on my shoulder. "We've come a long way," she said softly. "We have," I agreed, wrapping my arm around her. "And we've still got a long way to go." Jessica smiled, her eyes shining with love and determination. "But we'll do it together as a family." Life had thrown us another curveball, but we had faced it head-on, united in our commitment to each other and our children. Our journey was far from over, but with each step we grew stronger and more resilient. As we sat on the porch that night, watching the stars, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. The unexpected reunion had brought new challenges and new joys, reminding us of the importance of love, family, and resilience. And no matter what lay ahead, I knew we would face it together, as a family. As we settled into the routine of our new lives, the dust from the revelation about Sam began to settle. Nathan and Sam's bond grew stronger, and it became a joy to watch them play together, their laughter filling our home with a renewed sense of happiness. Lisa and I had started developing a friendship, and she often came over with Sam for play dates. Our family had expanded in unexpected ways, and it felt good to have the support of new friends. One rainy afternoon, Jessica and I were sitting in the living room enjoying a rare moment of quiet while the kids napped. The sound of the rain tapping against the windows was soothing, and we were wrapped in a comfortable silence. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened," Jessica said, breaking the silence. "About Mark, and how he manipulated us." I nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The scars from the past were still there, and while we were healing, the memories lingered. "It's hard not to think about it sometimes," I admitted. Jessica sighed, her expression contemplative. "I feel like there's still so much we don't know. Mark's sudden disappearance, the way he played with our lives. It doesn't add up." Her words sparked a thought that had been lurking in the back of my mind. There were too many unanswered questions, too many loose ends. "Maybe we should try to find out more," I suggested. "Get some closure." Jessica looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of determination and hesitation. "How would we even begin?" "Lisa might have some information," I said. "And there are ways to track people down. Maybe we can get some answers." Jessica nodded slowly, her resolve strengthening. "All right, let's do it. We need to put this behind us once and for all." Over the next few days we talked to Lisa, who provided us with what little information she had about Mark. It wasn't much, but it was a start. We also reached out to a private investigator, hoping to uncover more about his whereabouts and his actions over the past years. The investigation took time, and as we waited for news, life continued as usual. Nathan and Sam's friendship blossomed, and Emma grew more curious and playful by the day. The normalcy of our routines was a comforting contrast to the uncertainty of the past. One evening, as we were having dinner, the phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID and saw the investigator's name. My heart raced as I answered the call. "Hello?" "Mr. Evans, this is Detective Harris. I have some information about Mark," the investigator said, his tone professional but sympathetic. "What did you find?" I asked, my voice tense with anticipation. "There's a lot to go through, but I can summarize the key points," Harris said. "Mark has been living under an alias in another state. He's had several run-ins with the law, mostly for fraud and other minor offenses. He's currently facing charges and is in custody." The news was a shock, but it also brought a sense of relief. Knowing that Mark was finally facing consequences for his actions was a step towards closure. "Thank you, Detective Harris. Can you send us all the details?" "Of course. I'll email you the full report," Harris said before ending the call. I turned to Jessica, who was watching me with bated breath. "Mark's in custody," I said. "He's been living under an alias and has a history of fraud." Jessica let out a breath she had been holding. "I can't believe it. After all this time." "We'll get the full report soon," I said, sitting down beside her. "But for now, at least we know he's not a threat anymore." The following days were a whirlwind of emotions as we read through the detailed report from the investigator. Mark's life had taken a dark turn after he left Jessica, filled with deceit and crime. It was clear that he had never intended to be a part of Sam's life or take responsibility for his actions. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch, Jessica turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "It's strange, isn't it? How someone who caused so much pain can just vanish from our lives." "It is," I agreed. "But maybe this is our chance to finally move on, to leave the past behind and focus on our future." Jessica nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and sadness. "I just wish we had known sooner, that we could have avoided all this heartache." "We can't change the past," I said gently. "But we can learn from it and make sure we never let something like this happen again." As the days turned into weeks, we focused on healing and moving forward. Nathan and Sam continued to strengthen their bond, and our family found a new rhythm. The knowledge that Mark was no longer a looming presence allowed us to breathe easier, to find peace in our everyday lives. One afternoon, while sorting through some old boxes, I came across a journal I had kept during the most turbulent years of our marriage. Flipping through the pages, I was reminded of the pain and confusion we had endured. But I also saw the moments of love and resilience that had brought us back together. I showed the journal to Jessica, and we spent the evening reading through it, reminiscing about the past and marveling at how far we had come. "We've been through so much," Jessica said, her voice filled with emotion. "But we made it through, together." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "We did, and we're stronger for it." As we closed the journal, I looked at Jessica, my heart filled with love and hope. "I'm so grateful for you, for our family. We've built something beautiful out of all the chaos." Jessica smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "I feel the same way. I love you." "I love you too," I replied, pulling her into a hug. The months that followed were filled with joy and new beginnings. We celebrated Nathan's 9th birthday with a big party, inviting all his friends, including Sam. It was a day filled with laughter, games, and the simple happiness of childhood. Emma continued to grow, her curiosity and playful spirit bringing light into our lives. Watching her interact with Nathan and Sam, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Our family, once fractured, had become whole again. One evening, as we were sitting around the dinner table, Nathan looked up at me with a serious expression. "Dad, can we visit Grandma and Grandpa again soon?" "Of course, buddy," I replied, smiling at him. "We'll plan a trip." Jessica's parents had been a constant source of support, and visiting them was always a reminder of the strength and love of family. It was important to keep those connections strong, especially for Nathan and Emma. As we planned the trip, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. From the darkest days of doubt and betrayal to the joy of new beginnings, our journey had been filled with challenges and triumphs. One weekend, we packed up the car and drove to Jessica's parents' house. The drive was filled with laughter and stories, a stark contrast to the tension that had once defined our car rides. When we arrived, Jessica's parents greeted us with warm hugs and excited exclamations. Nathan and Emma immediately ran off to explore the house, leaving Jessica and me to catch up with her parents. As we sat in the cozy living room sipping coffee, Jessica's mother turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, we've seen how much you've both grown through all of this," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "We're so proud of you, and we're always here for you." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. "Your support means the world to us." Jessica's father nodded, his eyes twinkling with pride. "Family is everything. No matter what happens, you always have each other." That evening, as we sat around the dinner table sharing stories and laughter, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Despite the hardships and the pain, we had come out the other side stronger and more united. Our family was a testament to the power of love and resilience. The following week, Jessica and I attended a community event in our new town. It was a chance to meet more of our neighbors and get involved in local activities. As we mingled with the other families, I felt a sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. One of the neighbors, a friendly woman named Lisa, approached us with a smile. "It's so nice to see new faces in the community," she said. "How are you finding everything so far?" "We're really enjoying it," Jessica replied, her smile genuine. "Everyone has been so welcoming." Lisa nodded, glancing at Nathan and Emma playing nearby. "You have a beautiful family. It's clear how much you love each other." "Thank you," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. "We've been through a lot, but we're stronger for it." As the evening went on, we chatted with more of our neighbors, sharing stories and getting to know each other. It was a reminder that despite the challenges we had faced, we had found a new place to call home. One night, after putting the kids to bed, Jessica and I sat on the porch enjoying the cool breeze. The stars above twinkled brightly, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the smallness of our troubles. "Do you ever think about the future?" Jessica asked, her voice soft. "All the time," I replied, taking her hand. "I think about how far we've come and how much we've grown, and I think about the life we're building together." She smiled, her eyes filled with love. "I'm so grateful for you, for us. I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else." "I feel the same way," I said, leaning in to kiss her. "We've got a long road ahead, but I know we can face anything as long as we're together." As we sat there, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. Our journey was far from over, but we were stronger and more united than ever. The road ahead was filled with possibilities, and I was ready to embrace them all, with Jessica by my side. Life after betrayal had been a difficult path, but it had also shown us the depth of our love and the strength of our commitment. We had faced the darkness and come out the other side, ready to build a future filled with hope, joy, and endless possibilities. And in that moment I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family. With the past finally laid to rest and Mark no longer a looming presence, we turned our focus to the future. The relief of closure, combined with the stability of our new life, brought a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. Yet there were still lingering doubts and unspoken fears that occasionally surfaced. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild completely, and both Jessica and I were committed to that process. One evening, as we were putting Nathan and Emma to bed, Nathan looked up at me with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy, why don't we have a picture of you and Mommy from when you got married?" The question took me by surprise. I glanced at Jessica, who smiled softly. "It's because we don't have many of those pictures anymore," she said gently. "But maybe we should take some new ones." The idea of renewing our vows had been a distant thought, something I hadn't dared to voice. But Nathan's innocent question brought it to the forefront. I looked at Jessica, who nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and love. "Maybe it's time," I said, my voice steady. "A chance for a fresh start, a new beginning." Jessica's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. "I'd like that." We spent the next few weeks planning a small, intimate ceremony. It wasn't about the pomp and circumstance, it was about reaffirming our commitment to each other and to our family. We decided to hold the ceremony in our backyard, under the tree where I was building the treehouse for Nathan. The preparations brought a new sense of excitement to our home. Nathan and Sam helped with decorations, while Emma toddled around, her laughter filling the air. Our neighbors, who had become close friends, offered to help with the arrangements. It was a community effort, a testament to the bonds we had formed in our new home. The day of the ceremony arrived, bright and sunny, a perfect reflection of our renewed hope. Jessica looked radiant in a simple white dress, her eyes shining with love and determination. I wore a suit, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. As we stood under the tree, surrounded by friends and family, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The officiant, a close friend, began the ceremony with words that resonated deeply. Today we gather to celebrate not just the union of two people, but the resilience of love and the strength of family. Jessica and I exchanged vows, our voices steady despite the emotions coursing through us. We spoke of love, forgiveness, and the promise of a future built on trust and mutual respect. As we slipped the rings onto each other's fingers, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This was our fresh start, our chance to build something beautiful out of the ashes of our past. After the ceremony, we celebrated with a small reception. There was laughter, music, and heartfelt toasts. Nathan and Sam played with their friends, while Emma delighted in the attention from everyone around her. It was a perfect day, a reminder of the joy that comes from love and togetherness. That night, as we lay in bed, Jessica turned to me with a contented sigh. "Today was perfect," she said softly. "It was," I agreed, holding her close. "I'm so grateful for this second chance for us." "We've come a long way," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion, "and I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else." "I love you," I said, my heart swelling with love and gratitude. "I love you too," she replied, her voice steady and sure. As we drifted off to sleep, I felt a deep sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew we would face it together with love and determination. In the weeks that followed, we settled into a new rhythm. The vow renewal had given us a renewed sense of purpose and commitment. We focused on building memories, cherishing the small moments that made up our days. One weekend, we decided to take a family trip to the beach. It was a chance to relax, to enjoy each other's company without the distractions of daily life. Nathan and Sam were excited, chattering nonstop about building sandcastles and swimming in the ocean. Emma, too young to understand, giggled with delight at the excitement around her. The beach was beautiful, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore a soothing backdrop. We spent the days playing in the sand, swimming and exploring the coastline. At night, we gathered around a bonfire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. It was a simple, perfect escape from the world. One evening, as we watched the sunset, Nathan turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Daddy, do you think we'll always be this happy?" His question caught me off guard, but I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Happiness is something we create, buddy. It's not always easy, but as long as we have each other, we can find joy in every day." Nathan nodded, satisfied with my answer. As I watched the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a profound sense of peace. Life was unpredictable, filled with both challenges and joys. But with my family by my side, I knew we could face anything. The trip was a success, and as we returned home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We had faced our demons, confronted our past, and emerged stronger. Our family, once fractured, was now a source of strength and love. Back at home, we continued to build on the foundation we had created. We focused on communication, ensuring that we addressed any issues that arose with honesty and compassion. Jessica and I made time for each other, nurturing our relationship amidst the chaos of daily life. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch, Jessica turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about going back to school," she said softly. "School?" I asked, intrigued. "What for?" "I've always wanted to finish my degree," she replied. "I put it on hold when we got married, but now I feel like it's time." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "That's a great idea. You should do it." Jessica's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Really? You think it's a good idea?" "Absolutely," I said, taking her hand. "You deserve to pursue your dreams, and I'll support you every step of the way." Jessica's smile widened and she squeezed my hand. "Thank you. That means so much to me." Over the next few months, Jessica enrolled in classes, balancing her studies with her responsibilities at home. It was a challenge, but she tackled it with determination and grace. Watching her pursue her dreams filled me with admiration and pride. Nathan and Emma continued to thrive, their laughter and curiosity a constant source of joy. Our family had found a new rhythm, a balance between the past and the future. We had faced our fears, confronted our demons, and emerged stronger. One afternoon as we were playing in the yard, Nathan looked up at me with a serious expression. "Daddy, do you think we'll always be together?" I knelt down, looking into his earnest eyes. "Yes, Nathan. We'll always be together, no matter what. We're a family and nothing can change that." Nathan smiled, his face lighting up with joy. As he ran off to play with Sam, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Our journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought us closer, strengthening the bonds that held us together. As Jessica and I watched our children play, I wrapped my arm around her, feeling a sense of peace and happiness. Life was unpredictable, filled with both joy and sorrow. But with love, resilience, and the support of each other, we could face anything. Our story was far from over, but I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together as a family. And in that moment, as the sun set and the sound of laughter filled the air, I knew that we had found our way home. With Jessica back in school, our family settled into a new routine. It was a balancing act, managing her studies, my work, and the children's activities, but it was a labor of love. We supported each other, making sure everyone's needs were met, and our bond grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, after a particularly hectic week, we decided to have a family movie night. The living room was a cozy mess of blankets and pillows, with popcorn bowls scattered around. Nathan and Sam were debating over which movie to watch, while Emma toddled around, clutching her favorite stuffed animal. "All right, everyone," I said, clapping my hands to get their attention. "Let's settle on a movie. How about a classic?" Jessica smiled at me from across the room, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "That sounds perfect. How about The Lion King? It's one of my favorites." The kids cheered in agreement, and we settled in for the evening. As the movie played, I looked around at my family, feeling a deep sense of contentment. We had come so far, and moments like these were a reminder of how much we had to be grateful for. Halfway through the movie, I felt a tiny hand tugging at my sleeve. I looked down to see Emma, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the movie. "Can I sit with you?" I smiled, lifting her onto my lap. "Of course, sweetie." Jessica glanced over and smiled, reaching out to hold my hand. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes about our journey and the love that had carried us through the darkest times. As the movie ended and the kids started to drift off to sleep, Jessica and I exchanged a glance. We gathered them up, carrying them to their beds, and tucked them in with kisses and whispered goodnights. Back in the living room we sat in comfortable silence, the remnants of our movie night around us. Jessica leaned her head on my shoulder, sighing contentedly. "I love nights like this," she said softly. "Just us and the kids, enjoying each other's company." "Me too," I replied, wrapping my arm around her. "These are the moments that matter." Jessica looked up at me, her eyes filled with love. "Thank you for being my rock, for standing by me through everything." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We're in this together, always." As we sat there holding each other, I felt a deep sense of peace. Our journey had been filled with ups and downs, but it had brought us to this moment, a place of love and unity. The future was still uncertain, but I knew that with Jessica by my side, we could face anything. We had weathered the storms, and now we were ready to embrace the new beginnings that lay ahead, together as a family. As Jessica continued her studies, she found a new passion and sense of purpose. Watching her flourish brought me immense joy. Our family had settled into a harmonious rhythm, and every day felt like a testament to our resilience and love. One Saturday morning, as the sun streamed through the windows, We decided to have a family picnic at the local park. Nathan and Sam were excited, helping pack the picnic basket with sandwiches, fruit, and snacks. Emma toddled around, her giggles filling the air as she clutched her favorite stuffed animal. We found a perfect spot under a large oak tree, spreading out a blanket and setting up our feast. The kids ran off to play on the nearby playground, their laughter echoing through the park. Jessica and I sat back, enjoying the moment of tranquility. "I've been thinking," Jessica said, her eyes on the children, "about how far we've come and how much we've grown." I nodded, taking her hand. "It's been a journey, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. We've become stronger because of it." Jessica smiled, her eyes reflecting the love and gratitude she felt. "I'm so grateful for you, for us. We've built something beautiful out of everything we've been through." As we watched the kids play, a sense of contentment washed over me. We had faced our past, embraced our present, and were ready for whatever the future held. The challenges we had overcome had only strengthened our bond, and I knew that together we could face anything. Later that afternoon, as we packed up and headed home, Nathan looked up at me with a thoughtful expression. "Dad, do you think we'll always be this happy?" I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Happiness is something we create, Nathan. As long as we have each other, we can find joy in every day." Nathan nodded, satisfied with my answer. As we walked home hand in hand, I felt a profound sense of peace. Our journey had brought us here to a place of love, trust, and endless possibilities. Back at home, as the sun set and the children settled in for the night, Jessica and I sat on the porch, enjoying the cool evening breeze. The stars twinkled above, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the smallness of our troubles. "We've come a long way," Jessica said softly, leaning her head on my shoulder. "We have," I agreed, holding her close, "and we have so much to look forward to." Jessica looked up at me, her eyes filled with love. "I'm excited for our future, for everything we'll do together." "Me too," I said, kissing her gently. "Together we can face anything." As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that our story was far from over. We had built a life filled with love and resilience, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, knowing that we would face it together, as a family.